Justine Willis-Toms. Welcome to the New Dimensions Cafe. Today I'm hosting Dr. Stephen G. Post, who is the director of the Center for Medical Humanities and Compassionate Care at Stony Brook University's Renaissance School of Medicine and author of Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the Seven Paths to Inner Peace. I'm speaking with Stephen at his office by remote connection. Stephen, welcome to the New Dimensions Cafe.
Thanks for having me, Justine. It's an honor.
Oh, it's my honor to have you as well. You begin each day in your work in compassionate care at Stony Brook with the question, how do I need to manifest love on this day? So what makes love such a priority in your life and work? I'd like for you to unpack your vision of the love you are imagining.
Well, I come to work and I don't necessarily speak of love because it's so easily misunderstood. Love of chocolate, love of designer jeans, I'm all for that, but it's not what we're talking about. So I come to work and I'm thinking about all the people who I'm going to encounter. I run a program, I direct a division of medicine and society. So I'm always encountering individuals and I know a bit about their life situation. So what love has me doing is asking what particular expression of love is most useful to this one particular individual. I know I'm going to meet at this time of day and later in the day someone else. So it could be that I know they need compassion because they've struggled a lot and suffered and whatever. Or maybe someone needs forgiveness because they've made some technical medical mistake and it's been difficult for a patient. Or maybe someone needs some creativity, some lively inspiration because their research projects are slow and not really taking form in the way they wish. Maybe somebody needs mirth. They just need a moment to laugh. And I'm notorious, actually. I I once during COVID, I came in here every day. I never stayed away, and in very tasteful fashion, when I would see people in the hallways or on the escalators who were kind of sad and looking a little bit isolated, I would say something like, well, what did the fish say when it swam into the wall?
Well, what did the fish say when it swam into the wall?
Said, damn. And so I keep myself filled with these kinds of one-liners, and I love doing that. Some of them are more sophisticated. Like, what do you do if you're agnostic, dyslectic, and you have insomnia?
Oh my, those are three very powerful maladies.
You're up all night wondering about the existence of dog.
It's true.
Yeah, so I try to keep people out of their sadness with very tasteful, never derogatory, never demeaning, but always just surprisingly hilarious, brief one-liners like that. And it does a lot for them because the science says, in a millisecond, they will turn around emotionally into a much more positive state of mind.
And there are neurotransmitters that are then released, like hormones that are released in that moment. Am I getting that correct?
Absolutely. Many of the brain chemicals are affected by this. And at UCLA, they have a center that just studies laughter and emotional transformation. It's really where positive psychology got its start, along with Marty Seligman at Penn. But it got its start because this wonderful guy wrote an article in the New England Journal about how he kind of laughed himself out of his illness. And these things are very worthwhile. And so it's just one expression of love. And I don't harp on it all the time. It's not appropriate all the time, but it's one expression of love that really makes a difference.
Well, I imagine, Stephen, when you talk about your students that come in and talk to you, what unique expression of love are they needing right now? That involves, on your part, some deep listening.
Well, it's so important because if we listen to people, generally all the answers will come out. You don't have to interrupt after 14 seconds, which is the average amount of time before a physician in America interrupts a patient who's just beginning to talk about their narrative. Uh, and I think that uh, listening is so important. So there are many cases where students have come in with, we had a student, when I was at Case Western, this was her first month on the clerkships in the actual clinical settings. And she must have misread a vial, but she managed to overdose a patient and the patient died. And at the time, I was the chairman of the Committee on Students. And she came into my office and I said to her, this is so sad. And she was really distressed, obviously. And I said, you still have to carry on. No one's going to hold this against you. Everybody makes mistakes. That's how people learn. They're not always as serious as the one you made, but everybody's making mistakes all the time. And I used my favorite phrase from Martin Luther King, those who make no mistakes make nothing. And she took a month or so off, composed herself, and she came back and she did very well. And now she's practicing medicine at Akron General Hospital and doing beautifully. So you always want to be listening. And I told her, I said, you're not going to be, this is just comes with the territory of becoming a doctor. I mean, we wish these things didn't happen, but every once in a while, rarely, fortunately, they do happen. And it's not something that you should hold yourself responsible for. You were doing the best you could.
Yes. One of the stories that you share with us is a mentor of yours, the late Dr. Foley. What was his advice to med students when they enter a new room for a new patient?
Well, Joe Foley had something at University Hospitals of Cleveland, which was informally called Stop, Look, Listen. So one of my still, Dr. Foley has passed away now, but one of his mentees, Bob Haney, an African American fellow who's very well known in Cleveland for connecting the medical students and the inner city hospitals. So he tells a story about how he was a resident at university hospitals, and with a group of other residents, they were following Dr. Foley, who was a very, very famous man. He's probably one of the most famous neurologists of his generation. And he would have everybody stop outside the door of the new patient. And he'd say, okay, let's breathe deep. Let's just stop and pause for a minute, collect ourselves. And then he would knock on the door and he would open the door and very politely, very diplomatically, he would ask the patient, may we come in? And he would make sure that the patient was dressed, at least covered anyway. And then the students would follow him in. And he expected them to observe very carefully. He used to take medical students to the Cleveland Art Institute, the Cleveland Museum of Art, which is a great one, and have them stand in front of portraits as groups and just reflect on what they were observing. And what didn't have to be a painting of someone who was ill, but just being attuned neurologically to making close observations of the world around you. And then so stop, look, listen. Listen attentively. Don't interrupt. Listen attentively to what's being said. And he believed that was the key to being a good diagnostician. So there are articles now in many medical journals saying that people who do these kinds of exercises, they are more clear and more accurate in their diagnoses, so they make fewer mistakes. If you're just nowadays, reading the computer printout from the AI machine 100 feet down the hallway, and you're not actually stopping, looking, listening, being there, touching. We wrote an article about a year ago called Out of Touch in the Journal of the American Medical Association about how important scientifically touch is in making a good diagnosis. And a lot of young folks now come into these situations and they don't realize how important that is. I mean, there are physicians I knew back in Cleveland, endocrinologists, who could walk into a room and just with their sense of smell, they could tell you pretty accurately what someone's problem was, or cardiologists who just by palpation could tell you what was going on in great detail. So there is something about stop, look, and listening, which is irreplaceable, and patients appreciate that so much. And that's what Joe Foley taught everybody who worked with him. And so he was one of the most successful teachers ever at Case Western and the Cleveland Clinic. And everybody loved him all over the country. And I miss him. He died about 10 years ago. And I went back to Cleveland and gave a talk at his funeral. And I'll tell you, there was only one Joe Foley, and he was the most amazing guy. He went to Harvard Medical School. He was a medic at Normandy. And he got off the boat, the landing boat, and he wrote about this. And in front of him was a little tractor. And the guy who was driving the tractor was decapitated. And Joe jumped up into the seat and he drove this tractor toward a seawall. And he got to the wall, and then he had two walls of his hospital. Now he had the seawall and he had his little tractor. And then he dug like crazy. And this was next to Omaha Beach. So over the course of the day, he had 400 or 500 people seriously wounded. And the last person to come at the end of the afternoon was one of his former classmates from Harvard.
Mm.
And he was on a stretcher. And he had a huge gash in his carotid artery. And he recognized Joe, and Joe recognized him. And he said, "Joe, am I going to live?" And Joe said very, very sadly, he said, "I'm sorry, Don, you're not going to make it." And Don's last words were, "Hey, here I am stuck on a beach in the middle of nowhere. And just when I need a doctor, I run into a quack like you." And then he died.
Oh, God.
That's a World War II story and a half.
Oh my goodness. I just had a visit with my own doctor last week. And so I've been immersed in your book when I went to visit her. And I noticed two things really that was instrumental with this story of Dr. Foley. And one thing, she apologized several times for standing in front of me because she said there's no chair for me to sit on. I was sitting on the only chair in the room. And the other thing that impressed me was she said, "Do you mind if I record our session?" And I said, "Not at all." And so she took out her iPhone and she turned on record. And in that way, she was able to make eye contact with me throughout our session. She didn't have to worry about going to the keyboard and keying
Right.
in things. And I really appreciated that.
That's a beautiful narrative, and it's so true. By the way, the computers, uh, you know, uh, we tell our students when you're in a clinical setting, you may have to put your eyes on the keyboard for a bit, but you have to apologize ahead of time. Turn around and say to your patients, "I'm very sorry, but this is just the way it works right now. I'll just be a minute, and then I'm going to swivel back around and give you my undivided attention." And that helps a lot.
That's great. That's great. So, what is essential that you could just share with us in this minute or two as we're together?
Well, these are the 7 ways of love, you could say. And the first is, may you give and glow. because of all the research on how people are oftentimes feeling a helper's high when they volunteer. They feel refreshed when they get away from the self and the problems of the self and contribute to the lives of others. May you heal with kindness is the second one. And that's so important to a good healer's art. They have to be kind and attentive. Uh, may you follow your callings. Don't get diverted just because someone offers you a little more money or a little more prestige somewhere. If you're doing what you're called to do, where you're doing it, stick with it because you may not be able to replicate it. That's how I feel about my job here at Stony Brook. So people do offer me other opportunities, but I don't want them because I've got my own thing here and I'm doing it exactly the way I feel called to do it. And that's unusual. And then the fourth is, may you raise kind children. I mean, why bring children into the world unless you have a purpose of helping them to become kind? And there are a lot of really interesting, scientifically informed tools to the trade of doing that. And I think parents really need to learn those things early on, and so that they can be happy and proud of their kids. And their kids are going to do better in school, better in life, better in partnerships of all kinds if they're kind. And then the fifth is, may you know the one mind, because that one mind which connects us all is so incredibly powerful. And it's the basis of intuition, of creativity. Many great creative scientists, like Ramanujan, the mathematician from India, he felt that he didn't have to explain his scientific algorithm because they all came to him. They were given to him.
He was a young, uneducated mathematician.
Not educated. He was a Hindu and he would worship at the foot of his Hindu goddess on a daily basis. And at the end of his meditation, he would have an impression of a new algorithm and he would write it in the dirt next to his knee with his finger. And then he'd come back and he'd write it down in a notebook. Those two notebooks of Ramanujan are in the very center of Trinity College Library at Cambridge University in England. And they are the basis of a lot of mathematical theory these days that underlies quantum physics. They saw one of his papers. He just wrote just a page from his notebook, and they invited him to come to Oxford, and he only lasted a few years there because they wanted him to prove everything. He didn't think he had to prove it because he knew it was true, and it was true. So that's the story. There's a wonderful movie called The Man Who Knew Infinity, which is about Ramanujan. It came out about 10 years ago. It's really great. It's worth seeing.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And then the other ones are, may you cherish the gift of nature. There's so much nature deficit disorder these days, people winding up in our psychiatric emergency rooms. And what they really need is to just go out and connect with nature and feel that beauty and understand that nature is a gift.
And that creates that response of awe and wonder.
All that positive psychology that Dackler Keltner writes about at Berkeley and the Center for Goodness. He writes about awe and wonder, and it's beautiful, and people need to have that experience. But it doesn't happen so much now because people are so locked into their latest machinery, their latest keyboard. And then the final one is, may you honor the spirit of freedom. Honor it. And that means behaving in a way consistent with something like the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or as they would like you to do unto them. However you want to phrase that. But it means freedom is not license. It's an opportunity to be a servant to others.
Exactly. So thank you, Stephen, so much for being with us on the New Dimensions Cafe.
I cannot tell you how welcome you are because I enjoy New Dimensions Cafe more than any other interview or podcast on earth. And I've done a lot of them, but there's just something about you and your quality of being that makes me delight in sharing these ideas with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's my delight to receive them on behalf of all of our listeners, too. I've been speaking with Dr. Stephen G. Post, who is the director of the Center for Medical Humanities and Compassionate Care at Stony Brook University's Renaissance School of Medicine and the author of Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the Seven Paths to Inner Peace. And to learn more about his work, you can go to his website, unlimitedloveinstitute.org. Or you can get there through the New Dimensions website, newdimensions.org, where you'll find more than 2,000 programs in its archive. I'm Justine Willis-Toms. I want to thank you for joining us at the New Dimensions Cafe, and I invite you, please do join us again.